The meeting is called to order at 5:31. May we have a roll call, please, Lindsay?
Chairperson Philip Goldstein,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Marty Jost,
Here.
Commissioner Tom Wood,
Here.
Commissioner Wendy Newland,
Here.
Commissioner Michael Lowry,
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Renzo Bianchi, Alternate Commissioner Janelle Mines.
Here.
Amendments to the agenda. Commissioners, any necessary amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. The determination of alternate voting, Janelle would have voted, but we have all hands on deck here, so that won't be necessary. Public comment. This is open public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody who wishes to address Planning Commission on anything that is not on the agenda, in which there will be public hearing on, I believe, all three items, correct, on the agenda. Staff, am I correct? Okay, this is opportunity to speak on anything not on the agenda. Is there anybody signed up for general public comment?
No one has signed up. but
Okay,
we
does anybody
might
wish to
not
speak
have
on
got-
anything not on the agenda? Very good. We'll close the general public comment. Move on to the consent agenda. There is one thing that I don't think is adequately captured in the minutes. And that is, and this is on the third and next to last paragraphs before reports. That is what I believe was the, after considerable discussion about the PDO amendments, I believe it was I know it was the intent of the commission to, for amendments to come back through Planning Commission, although reflected in the consent agenda, unless otherwise pulled. So, commissioners, am I correct in that? I don't believe this was an error in capturing it. I just think it was rather confusing. And I don't think it was anything more than it wasn't necessarily on the agenda per se, so there wasn't necessarily a formal vote, but that was our intent. So, commissioners, if you're in agreement with me, then Carolyn, am I correct? We would need a motion to that effect. I can restate that. Or
Yeah, if
first
you
we have
want-
to pull the minutes out of the consent agenda.
Technically, you would first move
Okay.
it off the consent.
Okay, all right. So and may I take the liberty of doing that okay. So we are pulling, we seldom do this. We're pulling the minutes out of the consent agenda for consideration of a motion and a second and a vote on the bringing all PDO amendments back through Planning Commission via the consent agenda, where they could then be considered, pulled out of the consent agenda for consideration as a business item. So unless I hear any other concerns there, do I have a motion to that effect? Okay, so we first are we're pulling the meeting minutes out of the consent agenda. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
We have moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we have to consider unless anybody has any further discussion on a motion to bring the PDO amendments back through Planning Commission.
And you could go straight to a motion to approve the minutes with the modification discussed, if you'd like. You could
Okay,
combine those.
Even though we pulled them out of we can do, okay. All right, so if you want to make a motion to amend the minutes to reflect the intent of the PDO amendments.
Motion to approve the minutes with the discussed PDO amendment
Okay, as discussed.
as discussed.
Okay. Second, all right. Any further discussion on that? Very good. With that, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries on a 5-0 vote. Thank you. Now, that'll be reflected in the minutes for this meeting, correct? As presented at the next meeting.
Yeah, we'll also go ahead and revise the minutes that you just approved to make that clarification. So we can include the revised minutes in the next packet if you'd like to see what the clarification is.
Okay, thank you. That sounds splendid. All right, with that, move on to no general business items, move on to public hearing items. And the first one up is 7A Ladera subdivision filing number 3. Troy.
This first item is the Ladera minor subdivision, third filing. And the subject property is directly south of the Floor and Decor site in Ladera. It was platted as one larger lot within the second filing of Ladera, and they're replatting this one lot into 5 smaller lots. The 5 smaller lots range in size, the smallest being 1.2 acres, the largest of the 5 being almost 2.6 acres. It's, sandwiched between I-25 and Whitesell, just south of Floor and Decor, just north of the Connell mining operations that are going on out there. This, as a minor subdivision, is going through the process in the land use code, is planning commission recommendation to town council, who makes the ultimate decision. The public notice was posted on the property. Mailings were sent out to property owners within 500 feet. And as well as the notice was published in the Colorado and given within the time frame specified in the code. So this public hearing has been well noticed. The property is currently in the RC zone, and as you all probably know, the Ladera subdivision is all within a PD overlay area. So it's subject to those PD overlay approvals that have been done in the past. The comprehensive plan shows this as the employment / regional commercial designation. So what this subdivision is proposing is consistent with both existing zoning, the PD overlay, as well as the comprehensive plan. This is just a diagram of the actual plat copied and pasted on here that they're proposing to do. It's the 5 lots have the gray areas is an access easement, both emergency and vehicular access. And there's some utility easements associated with that. And there's also an access and utility easement going between lots 4 and 5 down to the south. Most of the detail we'll see at the time of site plan review, as far as the layout, the parking lot, the private street, landscaping. So really what we're seeing is just utility easements and vehicular and emergency access easements, and they're just the lot layout basically. At this minor subdivision level of review, it's not a lot of information that we're approving, and that's the way the code is sort of directing us to review that. There are A through G criteria in the 2.9.10.11 A2 for the review criteria of minor subdivisions. it's consistent, like I said, with the land use code, the comprehensive plan. And as I said, it was part of a major subdivision, this lot, and this is being replatted with this minor subdivision process. We've routed it to the utility providers and the outside agencies, as well as internal here staff. And we're down to only a few little minor comments that can be just addressed prior to final signatures. The minor subdivision process is kind of this last, I think this last one, the item G. The way our minor subdivision process is written is a development can have, if it's more than 20 acres and the overall Ladera is more than 20 acres, can have a total of 10 minor subdivisions within the area and within the development, and this would be the second. So they could have up to 8 more. And it's my understanding, and you'll see this in the months to come, but we're reviewing the preliminary plat for the remainder of the Ladera South area. And so this is a piece that's just north of what that will be, and it overlaps a little bit. They'll be replatting lots 4 and 5, but that's not really part of what we're reviewing tonight, but just to kind of a heads up. The lots 4 and 5 that they're platting here tonight will become part of the preliminary plat in the future, and I think the applicant's presentation will show what I'm talking about there. But the staff recommends approval of the Ladera third minor subdivision, third filing, I mean, just subject to the condition to allow staff to work with the applicant to address all the minor non-substantive modifications and unresolved comments prior to signatures, which is a very short list of just, wording of how the easement language needs to be, and a few, minor comments on some of the design details on some of the utilities.
Troy, before we go any further, as we often do, would you mind explaining, or somebody explain the logic of the minor subdivision process in as simple terms as possible for newest commissioners and maybe even an older commissioner or two?
Yeah, one of the criterias of minor subdivisions is that it doesn't include like a public right-of-way dedication, and this doesn't, and part of the reason for that is it's a commercial subdivision as opposed to residential subdivision. Normally in the residential subdivisions, the streets would be public right-of-ways, so you don't see a lot of minor subdivisions for like a residential neighborhood. But in the case of commercial, and particularly in Ladera, the approach that the code does allow them to do is to use private streets and private drives within their commercial areas. So much of the details of those end up being a site plan review type of thing. We try to get the easements at the time of platting that we would need, but most of the design detail then comes later, and that's the idea is that if there's no public right-of-way being dedicated, it should be a fairly simple platting process. I don't know if Chad or Scott, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just say in principle, the intent of the minor subdivision is a development that's less impactful. So typically there are not as many improvements that would be proposed within that development. So it's not as high of level of detail as a major subdivision process. And with our code, this is following our current standards for that minor subdivision as we're reviewing it tonight.
Okay, I just wanted to get that out. So let's go back to our normal game plan here. So presume you're opening it up to our applicant now?
Yes, would you like me to get that diagram that you sent me?
Okay.
Pulled up. Okay.
I am Will Welch. I'm the program manager for Ladera, and the address is 7785 Highland Meadows Parkway. And when Troy gets our little super fancy sketch up, we will give you a little context. So this is kind of a cut from one of our master plans, and it shows the 5 lots that are encased in the red boxes. So the 3 lots to the north will really be more in that northwest quadrant. We're really excited about getting this done because we've got a number of casual and contemporary casual restaurants that are looking at this property. So as soon as we can get the lots formed, hopefully we can get them sold. It's fishing, so we all know how fishing goes. But and then that'll allow us to really finish and polish up that northwest area of the property and really get some areas finished. So we're very excited about that. The lots 4 and 5 to the south are kind of a remainder parcel. The bottom line there is basically the annexation 1 and 2 line. And so we will end up then replatting in Ladera South subdivision, major subdivision, to create those 3 lots that are in the blue boxes. And those are the golden egg boxes. Those are big box retailers. They're going to be big tax generators. And we're really excited about those. The little red boxes are little golden eggs, but the big blue boxes are where the real golden eggs are hiding. Let's see, you'll see the Ladera South subdivision, the blue box, here in a couple of months. Like Troy said, we're working through submittals. We just submitted our second one that went in last Wednesday. So we'll be back in front of y'all to talk about that again shortly. And that's really my story, unless y'all have questions.
So anybody, Lindsay, anybody signed up for public comment or anybody wish to speak on this? Okay, Will, why don't you stay up there because now we'll come up here and see what questions the commissioners have.
I just had one.
Renzo?
Yeah, if I may. I just had one. I see the private drive, but now that I see your picture, how do you expect people to be able to access this all through that private drive that was shown there?
The one to the north or the one to the back?
The ones that are in the blue area, for
Yeah.
example.
So they end up with 3 accesses. There is an access that will be between lots 1 and 2 in the red boxes. So there will be an access there. That's kind of a secondary access. That's not a primary. Then just north of the buildings, there's a right in, right out.
Okay.
And that will mainly be for the loading docks and the back of house buildings behind those big box retailers. And then you'll see that there is another access right off the toe of the front of the buildings that'll be in the next subdivision, in the major subdivision for Ladera South. That's the grand entry. That's the entry that the retailers, are really, that's where a lot of their customers will come in. And then down at the bottom of the blue box where the bottom bar is, that's actually going to be a signaled intersection. And so there will be a lot of traffic moving in and out of there because there'll be a traffic signal down there.
And the reason why I was bringing that up, Phil, is one of the discussions I had before the meeting started was that Costco, it's starting to get really busy out of that intersection coming out of Costco. Because they still allow the left-hand turn. So I was just concerned, what are we going to be doing for traffic and what are we going to be doing for safety if we have a lot more traffic moving in and out of there?
Yeah. Did I get you what you wanted?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
you answered my question.
Okay.
Other questions, commissioners?
I only have one. How does the PD overlay work with this?
The criteria that have the PD overlay exceptions to the code are primarily site plan review items. So within the platting and the subdivision requirements, I don't believe any of the PD overlay requirements or exceptions, had anything that was changed with regard to subdivision rules. It's all going to be applied at the site plan.
Correct. There are two PD overlays that affect this. There's kind of the general broad brush one. And then there is another PD overlay, I believe, that is on the big box to the west
Yeah.
because there was a height question for
Yeah,
that user.
That's what I was getting to on that.
Yeah, and so yes, there is a separate PD overlay requirement for that particular site, but it's not subdivision wide. It was a particular
Yeah.
location.
So it's primarily design standards that the PD overlay applies to, which isn't applied at the time of plating. It's at the time of site plan review.
But unless I'm misunderstanding, if there was one specifically on the height, if we're subdividing this, into 5 lots, how does it follow that one particular one? Or do you have to redo it?
It was actually mapped onto that lot. When the PD overlay was done, it was actually mapped onto that lot. So it didn't apply to everything.
Well, I know, but that specific lot is changing now though, right?
Chad, are you familiar with that? I'm not familiar with that particular PD overlay.
Yeah, so I get what you're coming from, Marty. So I'd have to re-look at what the language stated as far as the legal description of the property that it was, but the intent was, as Will mentioned, was identified to match that southwest lot that is represented in blue there, to have that ability to have a height
So it's going to be
to
transferred
bring
to
that
that one
forward.
specific
So that
lot.
would go to that specific lot.
Okay, so there's nothing that we have to do to,
We can verify with their team to ensure, but I believe the way it was written, there wouldn't need to be a modification to that legal lot
okay.
definition.
Carolyn,
So there's no change being made to the PD overlay in this application. And what we're doing then is whatever area would have been mapped on the PDO amendment as this area is allowed to have a higher height, that would continue to be that square footage regardless of whether it aligns exactly with these lots. Hopefully it's really close, but I think when we do the major subdivision, which is actually going to be subdividing the 2 properties to the south, we can look at that time as well, and in case any adjustments are needed.
Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't have to come back to the.
Yeah, no, that's a great question.
other questions?
Yeah, I just have.
Wendy?
So just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at here. So there's 5 lots, the red, right?
Correct.
And then the bottom red line is the top of the lot. And then the blue line is the bottom of that lot, right? And that's also going to be subdivided? Is it? do I
Okay,
understand?
so let me back up one more. So the entire outlined red box
Yep.
was lot 4 of filing number 2.
Mhm.
So filing number 3 is only dealing with lot 4 of filing number 2.
Got it. Okay. And then the site plan this is probably for you, Troy and Chad. The site plan is when we look at where the parking goes and
Right, where the building is, the
Yep.
parking, the landscaping, the building
how
elevations.
people get in and out.
Yeah,
when they
because
dial in.
currently
Okay.
they've got to have a lot that they can sell to a user, and then the user decides what they're going to put on it.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Other questions, commissioners? Very good. Any, perhaps a naive question, any issues, had this remained one large lot, any issues that come up as a result of dividing this?
Not that we haven't worked through. It really comes down to vehicular access and ultimately pedestrian connectivity. And we have worked through that. They've got, the north-south street to the west of Floor and Decor is Sima Vista. And so that their access point lines up with that on the north of this filing. And again, like Will was saying, they have a right in, right out behind, like at the, the north end of what they're showing as the big boxes. And then we also have a vehicular access easement between the two big boxes that are shown. So it's a very broad brush level of detail at this point, but it's giving us enough comfort level that there is adequate vehicular ability. And then there is a note that they're putting on this, in the circumstances when a vehicular access easement that they're dedicating at the property line is platted in this filing, then the associated sidewalks with that private street will be platted at the time of the site plan. And that was one of the things that we sort of negotiated because they didn't quite know what the user's design would ultimately be on those sidewalks, but we were very adamant that they had to have the sidewalks, but if they need some flexibility in how those sidewalks are designed, we allowed that to be done at the site plan as well. But there's a note that makes sure that those sidewalks will definitely be there as part of it.
Speaking of the private, oh, no. Speaking of the private drives, we've come to some agreement on that satisfactorily, Troy. Everything is proceeding. I heard it's come up at council meeting, but we're working through that.
We've been having a lot of conversations, but I think we're on the same page with how
We're all
how
still
gonna
friends.
deal with that.
So.
Both them and the town. Yeah.
It's good to hear. That's what we want to hear. All right, commissioners, any other questions? All right, with that, do I have a motion on, excuse me, on public hearing, business item number 7A, Ladera subdivision filing number 3?
Motion to approve item 7A, Ladera subdivision filing number 3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0 vote. Thank you. Business public hearing item 7B, Timnath Landings PD overlay amendment number 2. And that's you, Chad. And do I understand you're going to discuss both together? We obviously vote on them separately and there'll be public comment, but
Correct. Yeah, I
Okay.
was going to do the presentation of both at once, allow time for the applicant to do their presentation as well. But then our discussion should be solely based on each individual item.
very good. Thank you.
All right. So item 7B is for the Timnath Landing Plan Development Amendment Overlay number 2. The applicant group is PCS Group, represented tonight by Jeff Norberg. The owner is CAC Timnath LLC, represented by Nick Montalbano. This application seeks approval to amend the Timnath Landing Plan Development Overlay District. The primary objective of this amendment is to modify certain dimensional standards within the land use code for future residential development within Timnath Landings. So the original plan development overlay was approved in August of 2015, which governs parcels 1 and 2 of the Timnath Landing subdivision. That makes up the entirety of the Timnath Lakes community or Timnath Landing community, containing 497 acres. The adjacent land uses to the property are the approved McMorris subdivision to the north, Walker Manufacturing within unincorporated Larimer County to the south, Harmony Club to the east, and the remainder of the Timnath Landing subdivision to the west. So what you're seeing here in the highlighted area is the area that will be impacted by this amendment to that PD overlay. As I mentioned, the initial overlay encompasses the entirety of the Timnath Lakes development. To date, approximately 246 acres within broader Timnath Landings subdivision have been developed under the provisions of the original PDO and the prior amendment. These areas include a mix of single-family detached, attached residential units, as well as some of the commercial uses. Again, the application seeks approval to amend the PDO-related district for the remaining undeveloped portion highlighted in blue, referred to as the Timnath Lakes North, encompassing approximately 252 acres. So within the process, this is a zoning document or application within the town, as hence where the arrow is there. So following this, any development or platting with this property would have to follow these dimensional standards or amendments to the PD overlay moving forward. And also in accordance with Table 2.1, preliminary plat application does require recommendation by the Planning Commission and a final decision from Town Council. You as Planning Commission shall recommend to the Town Council either approval with conditions, or denial based on our land use code. And the site was properly noticed, all by physical posting on the property, letters within the surrounding property owners, and the notice within the Coloradan. So the properties are zoned, the base zoning for these properties are a mixture of the R2, R3, and CMU, which currently have the existing PD overlay within it. Within the comprehensive plan, it is designated as medium density residential. This is defined by the comprehensive plan to be the broadest category in terms of allowable density, providing for typical suburban development with considerations for adjacent land uses. The comp plan suggests an inclusion of small lot, single-family units, duplex, triplexes, and multifamily townhomes as primary uses within the comprehensive plan document, with secondary uses intended for neighborhood and community parks. Additionally, before I jump into the proposal, you may recall that the amended Timnath Landing sketch plan did establish a maximum of 764 dwelling units within the subject area. So quickly, in addition to the compliance with the town's technical criteria and our standards, this application is reviewed against the Plan Development District Review criteria, which I'll just briefly highlight, and just if you can recall these as we go through the process, this is what we'll be reviewing this against, you as the Planning Commission. That the Plan Development District shall have a unified character throughout the district, and that the district shall have no more adverse effects on health, safety, or welfare of the surrounding properties, or shall be no more injurious to property or improvements in the area than would be any other use generally permitted in the same district. Adequate utilities shall be provided. The proposed district will not substantially impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property. No significant traffic issues are created, and the planned development district results in a more efficient development, which may contain innovative and creative development. So the proposed amendment targets modifications within the following areas. There's an R2 north boundary represented, an R3 north boundary, and then a transition overlay. These modifications include reduced lot sizes and setback requirements to aim to support a compact residential development while maintaining compatibility with the surrounding neighborhoods. In exchange for the flexibility, the applicant proposes to dedicate a minimum of 30% of the gross site area as functional open space, which exceeds the town's requirement of 20% by 10%, and that is a minimum. The proposal will include the extension of regional and neighborhood trail network with approximately 7 to 10 miles planned throughout the development. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the representation of the changes for the R2 North area. So everything within the boundary of the orange to the right are being proposed within this document. Within your packet, I did show them against the R2 standards within the code. However, the original PD overlay actually does govern this portion of the property currently. So this is what the comparison of what the existing overlay is showing right now. So as you'll see, there's a reduction in the minimum lot area for lots that are defined as detached from 5570 to 4,000 square feet, reducing the minimum lot width to 45 along with the frontage. The initial overlay did have an impervious coverage of 50%, which was the standard in the code at the time. The code has changed and that is now 60%. So we just are updating that to match what the code requirements are. Again, changes to the garage setback, minimum side yard setback, and the rear yard setback. Within this portion, there's also the request to allow for smaller lot sizes for attached products. So that could be the implementation of paired homes or townhomes or variations of such within this area. Those are permitted in R2 currently as uses. This just reduces the lot sizes to allow for a little bit more of an efficient design and build out. So those standards are matching what the existing R3 would be within this area in orange. One thing would like to point out though, with the minimum lot width being at 45, I think that's kind of right at the range where, right at the line where we would be comfortable with allowing that based on product type and matching setbacks and all the requirements within the development. So that was a conversation that was had to ensure that if there was something to come in at that size, they would need to ensure that all other requirements of the code were to be met as far as design and landscaping within that. Additionally, the R3, which you'll see in the south east portion of the site in blue, is actually now going to increase their area to where it has a larger footprint and lot size within that to further match some of the adjacent uses within Timnath Landings and other areas. So they would have a 4,000 square foot minimum rather than the 1,800. They would increase the minimum lot width, frontage, and actually reduce the surface lot coverage, as well as reducing the rear yard setback and the front yard garage setback would be within that R3 green portion. Then lastly, there is this transition zone. So the transition zone was intended to maintain a more standard single-family residential design and implementation next to existing development or within the open space areas within the lakes. So everything in blue there represents a product that would match the R2 standards currently. And so they would be subject to the R2 standards, so 7-foot setback. I apologize, this graphic I believe is not correct. So they would meet the R2 standards, a 7-foot setback, 6,000 square foot lots, and all the dimensional standards of R2. So this represents something smaller. My apologies for that confusion there. Anything in blue would represent an R2 standard, 6,000 square foot lot, larger setbacks.
Chad, wait a second.
Yep.
What are you referring that would, in what is it corrected to?
Sorry, this mouse appears to be dying. So the transition zone is anything in blue here. So adjacent to either the lakes or development that is existing to the east. They would fall under the standards of R2, and I can just read through what that is to clarify. So I'll just take this off the screen so it doesn't confuse anyone. So the minimum lot area will be 6,000 square foot in that blue boundary. Minimum lot width, 54 feet, lot frontage, 35 feet, and then the impervious lot coverage would be 60%. The garage setback would be maintain the 22 feet, which is per the code, have a 7-foot side yard setback and a 20-foot rear yard setback. And so that's within the areas that are within sort of the boundary of the development to help limit the impacts, not only view sheds into the lake, into the mountains, but also to adjacent property owners as well, looking to the east or to the west.
Okay, thanks.
So with that, we have reviewed this application against the review criteria and found that all of the criteria to be met with the application. One being that the plat is a functional system of land use and is compatible with the adjacent densities and lot sizes, not only in Timnath Lakes, but the surrounding property area. And complies with the medium density residential designation of the comprehensive plan. Number 2, that the preliminary plat is in conformance with the approved sketch plan amendment, permitting a maximum of 764 single-family dwelling units. 3, that the plat is meeting the criteria as it complies with the R2, R3, and the Timnath Landing PD overlay zoning requirements and dimensional standards, meets the medium density residential designation, and furthers the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan by encouraging efficient and intentional uses of land to create a livable community. That's goal 1.3 of the land use code. One thing I will say is that within review of this, we did identify a potential conflict between the existing boundaries of the zoning map and the proposed lot layouts, which would result in the split zoning across lots within the application. So to address this, we've reached out to the development team, requested a zoning map boundary adjustment to be submitted that has been in review concurrent with this application. And so we have worked with our team to ensure that everything within that R3 area where there is conflict would then be surrounding all those lots. So there's no conflict of split zoning, which doesn't create any legal issues moving forward. And that's number 4, that it is an impact study, transportation impact study was projected the increase in traffic and road systems and design for the construction to accommodate the capacity per Lucas standards. The infrastructure will be extended into the project and has been designed to accommodate the increased demand. And that utility districts have committed to serve this development in the specific infrastructure that will be reviewed in more detail at the final plat. Preliminary plat as presented does not have negative impacts have been identified, including increased traffic and drainage. These will be mitigated by the construction of those internal roads and access points, along with the dedicated detention for the controlled runoff. And with that, we are recommending approval of the Timnath Landing Plan Development Overlay Amendment Number 2. With the condition that only allow staff to work with the applicant to address minor non-substantive modifications and unresolved comments prior to final signatures, and that future platting of the development under the modified dimensional standards does not exceed the permitted 764 dwelling units as approved by the sketch plan. With that, I will turn it over to Jeff. Do you have anything? Oh, yep, sorry, I will do all of them at once.
You are going to discuss 7C now and then?
Yep, I'm doing
Okay,
7C.
that's what I thought. All right. Jeff, that's what you were tending to, correct? Okay.
All right. So item 7C, this application seeks to amend the Timnath Landing preliminary plat for the remaining portions of the Timnath Landing subdivision currently designated as development tracks. This amendment applies specifically to tracks A and B, which are proposed for subdivision into 698 single-family residential lots, along with designated tracks for future parks, trails, open space, and utility infrastructure. Again, we already touched on the adjacent land uses. The subdivision process, again, does require all forms of noticing, which were done. Again, this will be require recommendation from you as the planning commission, and final decision will come from town council. Again, the existing underlying zone districts are the same, so R2, R3, and CMU with a PD overlay. The comprehensive plan, again, is medium density residential. And I do apologize for the graphic that is represented here. It's kind of a large plan set, so it was a little difficult to find out the appropriate one. But the applicant team should be able to provide you a little bit more context as graphically as far as what the proposal will be. The proposed amendment establishes a gross residential density of 2.8 dwelling units per acre, consistent with the allowable density permitted with the R2 and R3 zone districts. The plat supports a development pattern and dimensional standards established by the Timnath Landing Plan Development Overlay number 2, which we just discussed. The proposed lot sizes range from a minimum of 5,300 square feet to a maximum of 13,673 square feet. That comes out to be an average of 6,709 square feet per lot within the development. This configuration supports a mix of housing types and aligns with the intended character of the subdivision. With the preliminary plat, it is dedicating approximately 53 acres of functional open space, which constitutes to roughly 21% of the total gross site area, which is meeting the minimum open space requirement of 20% for single-family developments. The open space plan includes one centrally located neighborhood park, 4 distributed pocket parks, all of which are located within a quarter-mile radius, meeting the code criteria. And the plan is in accordance with the town's PROS plan, integrating the comprehensive trail network. So it has neighborhood trail connections and a regional trail alignment, facilitating connectivity within the town. All amenities are planned to accommodate both hard and soft surface paths with a linear design connecting the parks and natural areas. Within the amenities that are being proposed would be playground equipment and recreational facilities for all age groups, shaded areas, open lawns, and gathering space, and then a dedicated dog park centrally located and connected via the trail system within the development. A neighborhood meeting for this proposal was held on November 18th, 2024, in accordance with our procedures. And approximately 10 residents attended the meeting with the purpose to present the proposal and gather feedback. A summary of that meeting, including comments received, has been included in the application within your packet. That was also included within the sketch plan hearing. I did receive some feedback from you guys in hopes to have a little bit more information to come out of those meetings that are represented in that. So you will see that that is a similar format because it was within the same meeting type. And again, we have reviewed this against the subdivision review criteria and found that all criteria has been met with this application as noted in your staff report. One item, though, I would like to mention was that, and it is included in your packet, that on June 4th, we received a letter from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, CPW. identifying what is considered to be a high priority habitat within an adjacent property of this development. Within that letter, they've requested that the applicant consider their recommendations regarding these avian wildlife. And so those recommendations included things, buffers and design mitigations. However, I did speak with the local district manager for CPW to get a little more clarity on this. He did note that the agency does not have statutory authority in Timnath, and it is just standard practice to provide this information for recommendation. However, we do recognize the importance of their department, and so we are suggesting that we continue discussions, us and the applicant team with the CPW to identify areas where they may be concerns and working with best practices to limit those concerns from the CPW. This did come a little late within the development review process. This goes through them at every stage. It just showed up at the preliminary plat. So we're continuing to ongo in those conversations. So that would be included as a recommendation of approval for the preliminary plat amendment number 4. To allow us to work with the applicant, non-substantive comments prior to signatures. Again, that the zoning map boundary line be approved and recorded prior to any final plat resulting from this application. And that the applicant shall continue to collaborate with the CPW or relevant environmental agencies and to identify any potential areas of disturbance to known protected wildlife species. With that, now I will turn it over to Jeff. Yes.
Turn your microphone on. There's a graphic there there you go. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Jeff Norberg. I'm with PCS Group. I'm here to present the PD Overlay Amendment 2 and Preliminary Plat Amendment 4 applications on behalf of CAC Timnath. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the development team whose efforts have gotten us here this evening. I'd also like to thank town staff for getting us to this evening as well. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Timnath Lakes community. It is an approximately 500-acre master plan community located north of Harmony Road, east of Timnath Parkway, and south of Busgrove Road. Much of the southern portion of this community has already been constructed, and it conforms with the original sketch plan, which was approved back in 2015, pictured here. The area in yellow is the subject of tonight's development applications. Earlier this year, we received an approval on an amendment to the sketch plan, which essentially updated the sketch plan to match what we were proposing at the time. And you'll see later what we continue to propose. But primarily the lake on the north side of the development was moved to the west side of Timnath Parkway and essentially was replaced by a neighborhood park to serve as the central design feature of this north phase of the community. A PD overlay had been approved back in 2015 that aligned with that original sketch plan. The dimensional standards of the underlying zoning, as Chad mentioned, were somewhat different at that time, as were some of the allowable uses. The primary purpose of this PD overlay amendment then is to update the PD amendment or the PD overlay to align with the revised sketch plan. So this slide shows the PD overlay amendment. We have simplified boundaries for the overlay standards, but have introduced a new transition overlay, which applies Timnath's current R2 standards to the areas within the diagonal hatch. These were located to ensure areas of lower density would remain adjacent to existing development. We are requesting to reduce the dimensional standards for the remainder of the R2 zone district, partly as a reallocation of density from the R3 area to the south, as Chad alluded to, but also because we are providing an excess of open space, a minimum of 30%, as well as a robust system of off-street trails, which are available to all Timnath residents. And here's an illustration of the proposed development in the preliminary plat 4 area. The proposed development is consistent with the approved sketch plan. In all, we are showing 698 homes on the north phase of this property. The maximum density of this area per the approved sketch plan is 764 dwelling units. So we are showing far less than what is currently approved for the property. This phase of the community will also see the construction of important trail connections as found in the Timnath Comprehensive Plan. You may notice a prominent design feature of this phase is the linear park. It's approximately 12 acres in size and stretches almost entirely across this phase from east to west. Over 75% of the residents in this phase will be within a 5-minute walk of this park. And for about half of these folks, it'll be right at the end of their block. These next few slides show renderings of the neighborhood park and the planned amenities, which include a large inclusive playground for all age ranges, multi-use turf fields, dog park, walking paths throughout the community throughout the park with connections to other parts of the community. We're really trying to provide as many amenities for as large a range of ages as we can within this park space. In summary, we're excited to continue moving this high quality community toward its final areas of construction. These preliminary plat and PD overlay amendments will enable Timnath Lakes to move forward in a consistent manner with the approved sketch plan. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Very good. Let me, is there anybody signed up or otherwise wish to speak on either of these issues? We can do, Caroline, do them together.
If you want to combine the public hearings, typically we keep them separate, but if there's no, you could combine the public hearings if there's no one who
Okay.
wants.
Is there anybody wish to speak on either of these issues? All right, we'll close the public comment then. So we're going to be discussing both of these, but we'll be voting on them separately. So commissioners, questions? Marty?
Yeah.
Looks like you got your light on.
So with the letter from CPW, wanted to talk about that. So just in case somebody didn't see some of the details in there, so that says there's a half-mile buffer around that nest. And in that, there's no surface activity within a quarter mile year-round, and no human encroachment or activity within that half mile from December 1st to July 31st, right? And it doesn't qualify for a reduction to 660 feet. So with that, I mean, basically that precludes the trail going through there. because it really couldn't be used for 8 months out of the year. And it precludes a lot of the homes being built. So, you know, with the condition of working with the staff, that's pretty vague. You know, I just don't see what you could possibly do there except largely ignore the state and federal guidelines.
Yeah, so it certainly wouldn't be ignore any recommendations. It just takes further discussion for us to understand what exactly their threshold is. When I spoke with their team, he mentioned again that this is just a recommendation. They understand the practical nature of the built environment, especially here in northern Colorado, and understanding that this has been going through multiple stages of review, that this comment is fairly new on anything we've seen from them. So this also, yes, that was alarming to me as well. So I reached out to get further clarification. So it sounds as if there are potential ways to move forward to lessen impacts and ensure that the hatchlings, which is the most of the concern right now, I think ultimately any bird or species could migrate at any time, but ensuring that during those hatching seasons, best practices are taken to move forward. So we just need to further our conversations with them to truly identify what would be the most appropriate and feasible steps without, in no sense would there be an ignorance of this request, just further clarification on their end.
Nick, right?
Yeah,
Now, I've got a feeling you came up to.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
don't you speak to this?
Nick
and
Montalbano
back-
I'm with
back
Catellis
to,
Development.
Commissioner Jost.
Yeah, so look, we're not planning on ignoring any guidelines, specifically federal guidelines. And I think there's an important distinction to be made here. So CPW is a referral recommending agency. They have no authority, right? And, you know, from the discussions that we've had with our consultants regarding the activity in the area, they generally are going to make these same statements on any application that comes through to them in which there's that kind of activity. However, development occurs within the half-mile and quarter-mile radius all the time, right? I mean, we, as Chad alluded to, we have an ever-growing Front Range in northern Colorado that's pushing into these territories. And there are, you know, it's common that you start to have these buffer areas that are encroached on, right? And there are ways you can work with these jurisdictions, and there are methods you can employ. So the distinction I do want to make, though, the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife buffer area is 660 feet. That is barely encroaching on the property. There is a small portion of the property that falls within that federal area. The much larger quarter-mile and half-mile radiuses, those are recommendations only by CPW. We had the initial application referral was sent out in April of last year. So CPW has had over a year to comment on our application, and we only just now received comments from CPW. So, you know, it kind of came through at the 11th hour. We will continue to have conversations with staff and CPW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I've already made contact with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and continue to work through this. I think it's important to understand this preliminary plat approval and this PD overlay. It doesn't approve any development, right? This is not giving us a permit. It's not a final plat that's allowing us to go and start development. You know, so that is where the ask comes from, that we continue to have these conversations with the understanding that, you know, this approval tonight and at council, hopefully in a couple of weeks, doesn't authorize us to begin development. There's time to have these conversations. You know, I think it's also worth noting that the McMorris development, in which the Eagle's Nest was approved, final plat, preliminary plat, with the knowledge that these birds were in existence at that location. So there is some history of approval and precedent there.
Marty?
I guess the one thing I would say there, it's a previous staff. This was kept from us. So we approved it without that knowledge.
I can't speak to that. I just understand that this activity has been, known for some time, as I understand it. But
Yeah, it only came up with McMorris because the couple that lived there brought it up. But
okay.
the
And was that at a
previous
final?
staff said nothing to see here. It
Really?
wasn't.
Okay. Was that at do you know, was that a final plat or preliminary plat approval?
That was preliminary back in, I think, late 2023.
Okay.
So neither here nor there on this, but.
Yeah, understand your concerns, Marty.
And wasn't this like 260 something feet from the edge of the property? That was in the packet? I don't recall. I thought it was.
Yeah, I believe that was
260
within
feet.
their letter. I apologize. I don't remember that
That's
number.
fine.
295, I believe, was what they cited that as.
Okay.
Again, though, this being that it is the preliminary plat, the request with this condition was to continue to understand better the requests and to further those conversations with an intent that at final plat, we would be able to give you guys some further understanding of what those steps were taken for the ultimate construction of the development.
Yeah, this appears to be a case of we're not able, we don't have the teeth to meet the letter of the law. But if there's some way to meet the spirit of the law, it sure would behoove us to do so. I'm not sure what that is. Continuing to monitor this is a step. The previous, the McMorris property, I concur with what Commissioner Jost mentioned, that that only came up because of the people that lived just to the west of there, I believe it was in the county, which is the county, correct, brought this up. Is there a way anybody can suggest to stay on top of this at least if we can't meet the letter, if we're not allowed to meet the letter of the law?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the request?
Okay, let me phrase it a different way. Because I heard a couple things said about continuing to stay in touch with CPW through this process. Let me back up for a second. If they don't have any teeth in any of these things, do they have any teeth at all in these matters? I'm just interested in knowing that.
Yeah, from my conversations with their regional director, was that they did not have the authority to impose or require these recommendations. They truly were recommendations based off of the intent for, in their case, in preserving this wildlife area or species that was identified. So those are recommended steps that ultimately with those, should the applicant would it be amenable to that? Would, yes, obviously be their recommendation. However, there is conversations that we can have to ensure that construction with the development could still occur without creating the disturbance to further hinder or create a problem that was not intended.
That's kind of where I was going, and I apologize if my initial go around of this was confusing, but would it be prudent to continue to put this on the agenda in some fashion so that we get a progress report, if you will, at each successive meeting? I don't know, I'm lobbing some ideas out there, seeing if anything sticks, and I'm open to other suggestions.
So this is going to come back to you for a final plat approval. And then probably for site plans as well. So at the time that it comes back at final plat, there could be additional follow-ups on this matter. Is that the request?
Well, that that's pretty far down the road.
Right.
Again, this is uncharted territory even after all these years. Tom, see where I'm going with that? You got any
Yeah,
ideas?
I think maybe from a legal perspective, that you should evaluate, should we recommend approval and should town council approve this? Are we putting the town at risk by knowingly approving something that maybe shouldn't be approved?
So I have not conducted that analysis so far. You can always continue this matter till your next planning commission meeting and I can come back with that analysis. Staff is reporting that it's a recommendation. So, but in terms of your jurisdiction, you do have jurisdiction not to approve this preliminary plat in its current form if you feel like modifications are needed or to continue this. So, I guess then maybe staff can speak. I mean, some of these requirements could be implemented, like recommendations, like the fencing recommendation would be implemented at the site plan level. That's not something that would be implemented now. So I guess if you need more information from staff and myself and want us to go through each of these recommendations, we can, because I don't know that we've had that level of analysis yet.
Well, I personally don't know that need more information other than we have a situation we don't necessarily, the agency that brought this up, albeit late in the game, doesn't have any teeth upon which we can act, let alone upon which they can act. What I'm looking for is something that keeps us very much at the forefront. So Marty, you know more about this than anybody. Can you think of anything that keeps us at the forefront? And Renzo's got his hand up.
So
let him
we
go ahead.
have on the agenda a staff report, right? Why can't we, as part of the motion on this, request that staff give us a monthly update on how this is progressing as part of that staff report?
Then you're endorsing what I was suggesting a
That's,
moment ago.
yeah, I think that's fair. And because one of the concerns is, okay, CPW doesn't have the teeth, but what if they get the ear of the US fish or the federal agency and they come back and say, no, you have to do this. So it would be good for us to have an ear on it.
I think a more likely prospect, and we've seen this across northern Colorado, an environmental group could file suit and say, you did something you shouldn't have done, and a judge could come back and block the development because of that.
Chad, your thoughts on, Renzo said a monthly report. I was going a little bit further at having it on each successive meeting's agenda, but
If,
it's the same, one and the same, if you will.
if I may, sorry, I mean, I'd be happy to have an intermediary somewhere between today and our final plat approval. Once we've had more conversations to effectively present our plan, talk about, the conversations we've had with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and CPW. I think for all parties, I think it would be good before we get to a final plat hearing to be able to show you what our, what the plan is, and maybe we could schedule more of an intermediary rather than, I don't know if there are going to be I don't know if there's going to be incremental progress. I think it's going to be more or less, we're going to have these conversations. There's going to be an opinion by staff and legal. And I think to me, it should be more of, we're going to present the plan. I think it could, and again, just my opinion, it could be a standalone kind of meeting that I would be happy to attend.
Well, as they say, we don't care who hits the home run as long as we win the game here.
Sure.
I don't think we're going to win this game entirely. I think we're going to make it as satisfactory as it can be, which is not entirely enough. But I'd feel more comfortable if our staff was
Sure, of course.
endorsed, however you want to go about this. I'd like to know that they're involved, and having a monthly or a every meeting update on this, even if there's nothing to update, I think would be the least we could do.
Yeah, certainly follow-up is absolutely something we can do with you guys to keep you informed with how our discussions go. Again, as applicant mentioned that I don't know how many conversations this will actually occur, so I don't know if incremental meetings are necessarily required, but we could certainly have a follow-up discussion to kind of go through the proposal and what the conversations with CPW on that specific proposal were leading up and before the final plat is submitted for your review.
Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily suggesting actually Nick mentioned incremental meetings, but incremental reports back to us if only, so it's a front and center. Michael, you had something to
Yes,
comment. Get on the microphone, please.
Has eagles generally, when they're nesting, have an alternative nesting site? Has that been located?
We identified, so there's also a red-tailed hawk in the area, and we identified one other inactive nest, raptor's nest. We weren't sure what type of nest it was that our consultant, no expertise in the matter, but they did confirm that via their inspection, it was not another bald eagle's nest, that it was some other raptor, most likely a red-tailed hawk, but it was inactive.
Okay.
We've got a number of other things, perhaps other questions you may have about these two business items, but, and we will definitely circle back to this before we vote on these. As long as we're on this subject, though, anything further on this,
I have
please.
So Chad, this is just to satisfy my curiosity because I don't understand how this works. Nick, I think you said you filled out an application in April. Was it April last year?
April of last year was when the first referral for our preliminary plat application went out to CPW.
Okay, and then that letter came in June 4th from CPW. So what triggers a letter from CPW? Is it the application process? Somehow they.
Yeah, so within each application that we receive, we route that to those referral agencies. Those that would be impacted by it. CPW was almost always within that list of referral agencies.
Okay.
So every application, and then if they don't respond, we typically don't send them the subsequent submittals, but every application that is received or new application is submitted to them, and they have the ability to review that and comment on it.
Okay.
Yeah, there may be a change in their team, and so that they've been difficult sometimes to get a hold of in the past. So this is a new format and letter that we've received. And yes, it occurred at a application that wasn't even related to this preliminary plat.
Thank you.
Others on this issue? Tom?
I've got a question related to traffic. with the-
Let's wrap this phase of it up.
Okay.
Marty brought it up first, and then
Yeah,
we'll go
I'll let
back.
that one go.
Like I said, we'll go back to other questions on this.
Phil,
Renzo, on this same subject.
right, when you make the motion, I suggest then that you ask explicitly under the staff report, a line item there that says you want an update on this.
Okay, thank you. All right, I hear you. Okay, others on this particular aspect of it. Scott, you have something to interject?
Unrelated, but we've had experience with a similar recommendation on a site plan at Harmony and I-25 regarding the blue heron nest. Similar buffering, similar soft recommendations, but no authority. With that approval, we worked with the petitioner, the developer, to make sure that they were not going to impact the nests and do an involuntary or voluntary take of a bird during their nesting season. And it went fairly well. I think that location is a little bit different than here. But I think the coordination and collaboration as this project develops, depending on the nesting season, what have you, I think there's a pathway forward. I think monthly reporting's not going to be realistic. There's not going to be a lot happening, at least at this point in time moving forward. It really is going to be more when you get to the final plat and actual construction activity happening out there where that coordination might need to happen on a more regular basis. So that's just my experience with a similar but not the same as different bird, different location, different nesting season. But it seemed to go fairly well with that coordination and that effort.
Well, that's encouraging that we have some precedent and some experience. No monthly reporting notwithstanding, I think we can certainly keep this on the front burner by mentioning it sufficiently as we go along, let alone when we get to that stage. Perhaps we will have had some interim information just to know it's still front and center. All right, with that, other questions for Jeff and Nick regarding this. I've got a couple, but I'll like to hear what everybody else has to ask first. Tom.
Yeah, traffic concerns. We're adding another 700 or so homes to this area, and there's really a pinch point at the intersection of Pinedale and Tinmouth Lakes Boulevard at that traffic circle next to the bridge. It does show that there's an eastern exit at Grand Tree Boulevard right on the edge across the ditch. Is it your intent to make that connection as a future exit for the property?
That connection, per discussion with staff, would be built at a later date by the town of Timnath. That was never a required improvement, offsite improvement pursuant to our SIA, or subdivision improvement agreement. And the discussions we have had is that would not be built by Catellis. We are, however, agreed to design the improvements to a 70% more conceptual level. And then we would also agree to pay for any final engineering, like structural design of a box culvert, things of that nature, via cash in lieu. So those have been the discussions we've had with staff and the direction we've headed with that particular crossing.
Great. Well, I had that same question, so I'm going to, this goes back to when this first came, Timnath Landings first came before us so many, many years ago, it seems. Now, Chad, when would you anticipate, that's a pretty substantial crossing there, pretty big ditch. When would you anticipate, is that in fact the town's responsibility? I thought it was the developer's responsibility from way back when, but whose responsibility is it, and when do you anticipate that would be done?
Yeah, so I'll quickly answer my portion, and then Justin, if you can help me out. So as Nick stated, within in our agreement with the subdivision, it did not require that the construction be done with this development, since it is on an adjacent property. So their team will construct a stub up to the property line and offer assistance in designing that road connection, as they're already doing the design for their internal roads. So it made sense to have the coordination there at the same time. However, it would be a project that the town at some point would move forward with. The timing of that, Justin, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, just to add a little bit. So in the history of this, the property or the connection is actually on the Harmony Club property. So if you notice, the street was platted. It was not required by that. So per Lucas, developers are responsible for their on-site development. We do look at traffic studies. So if the traffic study did show we had issues at some of the intersections, they would have to make that connection. The traffic study showed that does not to be made at this time. Our requirements don't require him to do that, or the developer, but we do think it's a necessary connection for the future. Harmony, we'll keep an eye on it, but we don't foresee that. Harmony volumes at this part of Harmony is still pretty low. As you get closer to Weitzel, it's a little bit different, but we just widened it to 4 lanes. So we do have some time on that. We'll keep an eye on it, but more likely it's going to be more of a long-term connection, but we do think it's going to be helpful in the future and necessary. So we do want to have it designed, ready to go if we do build it. And so the applicant was very, worked with us quite a bit to get the design and work and help us out also to make sure that the connection will work when we do connect it, that both subdivisions will line up and the roads will connect.
Right, I think that, from a fire and health safety standpoint, if they build out all of that and for some reason Bus Grove Road is blocked, there's very few exits. And without that exit, I think you're setting yourself up for some issues because not only the new development, but all the existing development, they all have to go through that traffic circle at Pine Grove and Tinmouth Lakes Boulevard. So that's going to be a real choke point. In case of an emergency situation, I think that that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think all developments, Harmony Club and even this development has plenty of, if you look at the connectivity, plenty of other access points. I don't know. I think you have to the north and to the west. So you already have two connections in
Yeah.
that part of the subdivision.
North and
So,
west.
yeah.
Yeah, and
They
I'll
both
just
go-
add,
they
you
all go
know,
to-
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they all go to Bus Grove and that's going to make the traffic circle at Bus Grove and Tinmouth Parkway the next choke point going north.
I think, Tom, I think the answer to our question is it'll be a while.
Yeah, I'm hoping that you build this all out quickly. right?
Sooner than later. Yeah, I know it's,
But
Yeah,
by the
that's
time this gets built out, you're going to have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
700 homes, times 2 cars a home, that's going to be a lot.
Yeah, and that's why we require the developer to do a master study. So we look at that. So that was looked at. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
other questions, comments? Well, anybody? Nobody? Okay. Oh. Marty.
So the neighborhood park it said that that would be built approximately 2026. That's a little bit vague.
Yeah, you're referring to the neighborhood park on Harmony?
Yeah, it just referred to it as the neighborhood park amenities in the packet.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so that's in reference to the bright green community park and open space there at the bottom. So that's an 11-acre park. And there is nothing in the SIA determining, I've been with Catella since 2021, so I don't want to make any interpretations in case there's some history that I missed. But as I understand it, it was always contemplated that this park would be built with our third or fourth phase due to the significant investment that phase 2 incurred, right? With 40 acres of lakes, the community garden and augmentation pond. Again, that's just my understanding that it would contemplate that this would be a phase 3 improvement. So what we have been doing on that front, we are actually preparing to submit a site plan application for that amenity within the next 60 days or so. What I've been wanting to wait for before submitting that application is to understand ultimately how the linear park, although quite far away, right? It's further north. I wanted to understand where we settled out with staff and our application in terms of what kind of programming ended up there. For instance, we didn't initially envision that there'd be a dog park in the linear park, but through conversations with staff, we implemented a dog park, right? We added a bocce and cornhole here recently as well. So like little thing, but in any event, I wanted to understand what that programming looked like so that we can then tailor our design on that park to provide a robust and varied set of different amenities throughout the community. And we believe we're at that point now, and that's why we want to proceed. So to answer your question, our intention is to submit a site plan application within the next 60 or so days, approval of that site plan hopefully by year end. And then the intention would be to begin development of that amenity in concurrence with the development of phase 3, filing 9. So that when the first home builder is delivering their first model home in filing 9, that amenity would be open as well. And same with the recreation center that's shown on the plan.
Okay, thanks. Only other question is,
So, sorry.
Yeah.
Probably later 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. At the neighborhood meeting, it seemed like, with the number of people, there was only like 4 or 5 concerns or comments. So was it really just that few concerns or questions?
There was a fist fight in the parking lot, but yeah, no, it was a good conversation. It wasn't contentious at all. I mean, Timnath Lakes is a now 10-year-old project, right? So I think there's a lot of familiarity with the application, and there's been a lot of dialogue. So I think it was the concerns were. I can't even remember what some of the concerns were, but we talked through.
Yeah, I thought there would be.
Relatively
I guess
minor,
Yeah, the reason I asked is I thought there'd be more on the density, the more concern, which there's not, so that's good.
Yeah, and I think with the density, the key point on that is, again, just that we are complying with the original sketch plan.
Yeah.
Chad mentioned it, I think, or Jeff, but we're 698 lots is what we're proposing on our preliminary plat, which is down from 764, I believe, which is approved in the sketch plan. So, although this PD overlay amendment does allow for more flexibility in terms of lot minimums and lot widths, it's for exactly that. It's to allow flexibility. It's to respond to changing home builder environments where, I think as we all know, right, there is a real challenge in terms of delivering affordable product, and we wanted to be able to accommodate that with some modest changes in development standards that would allow for, as Chad mentioned, the 45-foot wide lot instead of a 50-foot lot, things like that allow for some flexibility, all the while knowing we're not going to exceed our overall density.
Okay, thanks.
Chad, you had something on this.
Yeah, I just wanted a quick response to Marty's question about the neighborhood meeting. So, yeah, most of the comments or concerns that arose from that meeting were just further clarification or understanding of a relocation of a lake that was represented on the initial sketch plan. That really took a big portion of some of those comments to understand where that was. But as Nick mentioned, that was pretty much the forefront of most of those discussions.
So as I can't remember exactly how many years ago, as I went back and anticipating this, checked my notes, some things, in addition to the distinct expectation that Grand Tree was going to be extended sooner than later. There were 2 other things I had questions about, and maybe we're talking about the same thing with your 60-day submittal of a park. A clubhouse, a community center, that's included.
Same timeline.
That's included in that?
Yep.
Okay, that's good. And there was something called a well mitigation plan. Didn't entirely understand it, but I had it in my notes. Where are we with that?
Your timing is impeccable. We recently just had our most recent round of inspections of any affected well owner. So basically in 2019, there were certain conditions of approval on our plat. Basically protecting homeowners prior to us constructing the lakes, to ensure that if any homeowner suffers loss or inability to utilize their wells in Old Town, that there'd be a mechanism for us to drill them a new well or offer some other negotiated settlement associated with that. So we finished construction of the lakes in end of summer last year, and early fall around there is when the lakes filled. So at the recommendation of Lytle Water Consultants, they've been the water consultants and engineers for this entire development, dating back to, I don't know if it goes all the way back to 2015, or at least until 2019. Their recommendation was that we begin what should be our kind of final round of inspections of these wells spring of this year. And we've just conducted those. And Scott and I actually just met about this before this call or before this meeting, and are in very frequent communication about next steps and how we respond to the property owners. But bottom line is we believe that through these inspections, we have a good understanding of which wells should qualify, which wells should not qualify for redrills based on the specific conditions of approval in 2020. And that we will be shortly making contact, subsequent contact with these affected well owners to more or less provide our findings and what our recommended solutions are.
Scott, we good on that? Great. Just one thing, check off my list. Commissioners, other questions or comments? All right, when we'll circle back, we're going to vote on these separately. We'll tackle, Carolyn, some condition language or something appropriate regarding the CPW issue when we get to the item 7C. So with that, unless there's any other questions or comments for Jeff or Nick or the staff, do I have a motion on business public hearing item 7B, Timnath Landing Plan Development Overlay Amendment number 2? I have a second.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, carries on a 4-0 vote. A 4-1, excuse me. Now, Carolyn, incorporating what I was suggesting and Renzo endorsed, what would you suggest as an appropriate condition or otherwise to address the issue about the CPW oversight?
Okay, thank you. The current drafted proposed condition is the applicant shall continue to collaborate with the CPW or relevant environmental agencies to identify any potential areas of disturbance to known protected wildlife species. You could add on to that. One suggested addition is, so this is relating to identifying any potential areas of disturbance to known protected wildlife. Could add and ways to mitigate impact on wildlife. And to direct staff to report back to the Planning Commission on a monthly basis until final plat approval as to the status of those collaborations.
Renzo, I think that captures it, don't you? And to Scott's point about there may not be anything to report, but I think just by bringing it up once a month helps to keep it at the forefront. If that be satisfactory, that sounds excellent. Jeff, you had? No. Okay. All right. With that said, with that language incorporated in the motion, do I have a motion on business public hearing item 7C, Timnath Landing Subdivision Preliminary Plat Amendment number 4? I'm losing my voice.
Motion to approve item 7C, Timnath Landing Subdivision Preliminary Plat Amendment number 4 with the conditions as read. Is that good enough?
Yeah, it sounds excellent. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries on another 4-1 vote. Thank you all. Reports, commissioners, anything to report? Justin, certainly.
Yeah, I did want to introduce our new senior civil engineer. After some search, we found a good candidate. He's got a lot of experience here in northern Colorado. So Vincent Gentry, you want to just wave? So he's a great addition to and we're getting him trained quickly. So, all right.
Thank you for doing it. That's a good point here. Maybe we jumped the gun a little bit, given our, we haven't had this for a while. Marty's question was registering his dissenting vote. So when this goes to council, so is it?
Yes, you're welcome to explain that at this point.
So my rationale of the nay vote is I'm just uncomfortable going forward without a plan, in regard to the eagle nest. And I heard and respect all, the desire to kind of work that out as we go. I just know that something with significant impact that this could have on that project, it seems like the further we go in the process, the further we have to concede what we'd like to do versus what the applicant does. So that was my rationale.
You had a dissenting vote on
It was both.
7B.
It was same rationale for both.
Same rationale for both. Will you communicate that when it goes to council, please? All right, thank you. And I appreciate you reminding me. I'm out of practice. Other than that, how many people, how many do we have signed up for the housing tour, this much anticipated housing tour this weekend?
We've got a full bus, so there should be 13 planned commissioners, town council members, and staff. So thanks for everybody who responded. It should be good.
Very good.
Sorry, I'm not able to sit that long.
Well, it's always hard to find a perfect day, but I'm sure your colleagues and ourselves will report on what we learned, and I'll share some information with everybody on the information on the sites, what have you. So
Not as much driving as last time, correct? This is here in the area.
it's all local in Fort Collins. So
very good. Other than that, commissioners, anything for the good of the order?
Yeah.
Wendy?
I think we had a great ice cream social. Very well done once again by the crew.
I concur on that, all our events. Anything else, commissioners?
We had some great rainfall today, and if you haven't seen the ponds all full, the stormwater ponds are at max. So I think it's a great way to test our stormwater system to see if it really works. And there has been a few roads that flooded, and maybe a few problems with ponds that clogged up. But I think it's really important that we watch when it rains and sees how it goes. And I appreciate town staff being out there. They've got a bunch of guys out there in yellow jackets messing with the water, and it's working.
So the levees are holding for now.
Yeah, watch out. There's some places where there's a few feet of water in the road.
Great. So noted. All right, anything else, commissioners? Very good. We are adjourned.